Now it's time to think in terms of the halftone. And the halftone will be the entire area between the shadow plane and the light plane. This entire area right here is all in halftone because the light is on this side of her face. The halftone also will be on the other side of the face, just as if it were an egg with a light across the middle of it. Halftone on this side, a light, halftone and shadow. Now laying in the halftone. Be a halftone between the light and the shadow always. On any graded shadow, there's always a halftone between the light and the shadow. That goes for the chin, for the cheek, for the nose, the above the eye, between the brow, on the neck, between the. Now this is the halftone between the light plane and the shadow. I'm starting out with the yellow ochre. The entire nose is essentially a halftone. It's very little light plane on the nose except for the halftone. One sharp highlight goes down the center. The nose is generally darker than we first perceived to be because the capillaries, blood vessels are near to the surface there. It catches the sun more, and this makes it a darker color. The same is true of the cheeks. Now mixing a bluish violet, number 7, in a Rembrandt color, with a graded shadow is caused by a form turning away from the light. The halftone color is used to turn the form into the graded shadow. The halftone is always included in the light plane, not in the shadow, and it can be gently blended toward the light and toward the shadow. The halftone is a color that is half in light. The shadow is shielded from the light. The exact place where the shadow begins is important, but there should be no edge between the halftone and the shadow. To be sure that you've blended properly between them, squint your eyes and blend any edges that you find while your eyes are squinted. Try to find all the colors in your tray which can be used for halftones, and which are that particular value which can be used for halftones, which would be greens, purples, what have you. Now the halftone becomes more apparent when I readjust my light plane color, when I reestablish the light plane color again. You can see a little closer the width of the halftone. It's good to remember that the halftone is a separate color itself, to be mixed individually. It's not a mixture of the shadow color and the light plane color. It's its own color. So we'll glaze in some differences in the pigmentation. If the light and the shadow colors produce the right contrast in value, hue, and chroma, the halftone may be dropped in at precisely the proper place between them. This procedure should produce a three-dimensional image on the paper. And it should also give you the ability to see these relationships better. Now this is glazing in the variations. And here green on the neck, put in some yellow for the forehead, and a little bit of green around the mouth. These variations are pigmentation changes. And this is the pigmentation change of the eye. This is a variation of the eye. I'm glazing in a color for the eye itself. She has green eyes, so I'm making this very apparent that it's green there. Now this will be a different color than, say, the shadow of the nose or on the neck. And I'm applying these variations after I've achieved a three-dimensional image with the light plane, the shadow, and the halftone. the variations are those colors, those differences, those color differences that we see and want to put on quickly. At this point in the portrait, they can be put on with assurance. We know just how pink to make the cheeks. We know just how red to make the lips. Because if we make the lips too red, of course, they jump out. They don't look like they're in the three-dimensional image of the head. The same is true of the cheeks. Make them too pink, it jumps out at us. Now, I quickly went through the glazing and the variations, and now I'm starting to work the features. And working the features, I'm going to do, as I did in the beginning, I'm going to work with the form of the feature rather than the outline. If the other 5 steps have been followed with attention to detail and artistic feeling, there'll be little left to do at this point in terms of likeness and actually there's a lot left to do at this point for this portrait. Sometimes these features will fall in very quickly, and you have to be ready to accept that the portrait may finish quickly. On a quick sketch, take what's given. If it comes quickly and it looks good, then with the foundation that we've laid, sometimes the portrait will look great at this point, and you won't have to do what I'm going to have to do. But I'm going to work the features a lot on this one. Try to make a good likeness and more of a character study. Now I try to work the left eye first because I'm right-handed. This is because you need to see the first eye that you've drawn in order to draw the second eye properly. And your hand will block your vision if you draw the wrong one first. As I was doing the variations a moment ago, I did them so quickly, I didn't get a chance to say that I believe there are 5 different types of variations. There may be more, but I can see 5 types of variations. One variation is pigmentation. The eye color, hair, lips, cheeks. There's a variation for plane changes. The angle of the light reflection affects the color. The skin is a reflective surface, and it will reflect to you the color of a light. Say, the side of the cheek will reflect to you a color of a light, which the bottom of the chin will reflect the color, say, a reflection of the light on the clothing. The side of the cheek will reflect a wall, and both of these are variations within the large mass. That's a plane change type of variation. There are depth variations. Variations such as at the back of the head will be a cooler or a grayer color than the front of the head or the hair. Just the way a mountain in the distance is a different color than a close-up mountain is. This is a variation of depth. The same local color for the hair, yet the variation, if you vary that the back of the hair, make it different than the front of the hair, a little grayer or bluer, then it looks like it's receding. And then we have lateral variations. That's the 4th type that I know of. Lateral variations, as light transits across an object, it changes in hue and intensity. Photographers call it light fall-off. The light reduces in intensity as it goes around a form, and it also changes hue. And then the 5th type would be combinations of these. Pigmentation change, like the cheek, as it recedes around the form, would be combining 2 of these variations. And so to look for those when you do the color variation, when you're glazing in colors, and also for finishing touches. Finishing touches can really make a portrait much nicer. And you can fuss around with the features as much as you want once you've laid a foundation of this sort. I know approximately how dark I want to make this area around the eyes because it has to fit in with the rest of the shadows. So I've already established which colors I'm using in the shadows, and so I know what colors to keep coming back to in order to make the shape of the eyes look more like the models. If I make something too dark, it's apparent to me that I made it too dark. If I make if I use black on the pupil here and make it very dark black, then it would be too dark. It would look more like a hole in the paper than it would go in with the illusion of depth that I want to. I've already achieved the illusion of depth. I want to keep it. And so I'll be using the colors that I've established work. And so you can fuss around with these features literally for weeks. Of course, in a quick sketch, hour and a half, 2 hours is maximum. Model's expression will start flagging after that. Applying the accents and the finishing touches. I'm going to start with the accent in the eyes and apply them all throughout the portrait. These highlights will fall on the high point of the form in relation to where the light is to the artist. The high point of the form, the glassy eye, it'll fall just above center and of course off to the left just a little if the light's to the left. Generally that highlight falls near the pupil, but not always. And you see that I put a slight highlight under the iris. The eye also makes the eye look wetter, and it's there. You should walk up close to the model and look exactly where both of those highlights are, and do them very carefully. A small highlight psychologically indicates good health. A large highlight would indicate an eye that was glassy or out of focus, whereas a sharp, tiny highlight indicates good health. Now I'm starting to get excited about the piece. I see I've rendered these eyes enough, and I'm starting to get a little bit excited. I'm thinking, well, this is looking pretty good. Well, I need to pull as much energy from the drawing as I can. Now if I picked up a color that was too light here, put on there, it would be immediately apparent to everybody it was too light, it would stick out way too much. I've got a nice creamy, deep pink, and it's deep enough to carry some color intensity with it. And it's not too light, it's not interfering with my light plane. It's fitting right in. There's a narrow range of colors in everyone's tray that can be used that won't look chalky, that carry enough deepness, enough pigment to be rich. Now I'm finding a highlight over the to try to get a little better likeness for her nose. I want it to look like her nose, and I'm not quite sure, so I'm putting in a little highlight to improve the form. I've put a background color in here, which brings the face out a bit. I've chosen a color that is between the light plane and the shadow plane in value. It's dark enough to make the light plane stand out, and it's light enough to make the dark plane stand out. Now, a mouth generally causes problems because of its mobility. It changes, moves on us. The thing to do is pick a pleasant expression that the model exhibits and shoot for that. Now I'm starting into the hair some. Hair has its own specific problems, and what you have to do is find the locks of hair. You still have to draw the lock as it's in the shadow, the lock as it transits into the halftone, and then into the light plane, and possibly into the halftone again. The color changes as you go from the shadow to the light plane, of course. A lock of hair has an identity you have to look at. You have to draw it the same way that you would draw anything. You can't just make the strokes of the pastel go in the direction of the hair and hope that it's going to look like hair. You have to draw the hair that is of the person. The most indicative portion of the hair on a person is the way it grows from the skull. Different hairstyles, people change their hairstyle occasionally, but they can't change the way the hair grows from the skull. So draw that closely, and you will be able to draw a person's hair much better. What I like to do is I like to make my strokes in the hair go in an opposite direction from the direction of the hair itself. In other words, oppose the direction of the hair, so that then when I get ready to draw an individual lock of hair, then I can make strokes go in the direction of the hair, and then they have, each strand then seems to have more meaning. A hairdresser spends hours sometimes trying to give a lady a beautiful shape to the overall hair, and so spending some time making sure that shape of the hair and drawing it carefully can be a beautiful embellishment to the portrait, and I add a lot to the likeness too. There you can see clearly where I've drawn the shadow part of the hair and the light part of the hair. If you look closely at the hair, you'll be able to tell how to draw it. Hereafter, dashing a few highlights on the hair, I'll sign it up.
Thank you, Beverly.